Hey everyone, and welcome back to another edition of NASCAR DFS Preview with the Sports Chief. I'm AustYn.
And I'm Yacs.
And we are going to Darlington Raceway for the Goodyear 400. Seems like every other year they're changing up the names a little bit, but this is the 400-mile event. We're going back to the way it used to be, pre-05?
Yeah.
Or so?
Yeah.
And it's really good to see Darlington Raceway have two races on the circuit. Just to give you a little synopsis of the racetrack, it's 1.3-ish miles. It's got a paperclip kind of shape to it, so turns 1 and 2 are a lot longer than 3 and 4. It's relatively low banked, honestly. The track is really weird, so it's like flat, and then it just has gradual banking, and then that high lane is of obviously what you're racing on. And
the big apron.
Yep, so you have the big apron there. I'm not really sure if that was what they were going for to begin with. I think a lot of racetracks were like that back then. One of my favorite tracks to go to, of course, if you're a historian or anything like that, you love history, it's a great track to go visit to watch a race. The drivers that love that high line are always going to perform well here just because that's the fastest way really around the track. A lot of throttle control. A lot of braking, a lot of tire wear. So those are a few factors that come into play in making a lineup this week. You want a driver that can save his equipment, but you also want a driver that, can gut it out because it is a pretty difficult track to race at. I'm sure years ago it was a lot harder than it is now, especially
they're constantly on the wall.
Yeah, you have to make sure. I mean, you're probably going to rub the wall a little bit, but make sure you don't hit it too hard because it'll jack you up.
Yep.
So yeah, with the way the qualifying format is now, it's really week to week. Your performance is where you're going to start, basically, and where you finished. I know last year when they did Darlington, it was basically a random draw, and then they'd invert the top 20, and then it was just random, kind of basically, anywhere from 1 to 20 to 20 to 1. I do like the way they do it better now, but I do wish they qualified. That would be so amazing. And I wish they had practice because then it's a lot easier to kind of decipher who's fast that week.
Absolutely.
Darlington is a track where you don't see a lot of the time, from what I gathered in my research, you don't see a lot of people starting on the pole and winning the race.
More so in the past, but yeah, here recently it doesn't happen very often.
I think the last pole winner was like Hamlin, and that was in 14.
That sounds right.
So that's been a while.
Yep.
Not to say, it could be due. Brad Keselowski's starting on the pole this time. So it's going to be interesting to see about that. Do you have anything to add there, Yacs?
Not really. No.
So 11 sets of tires. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Yeah.
11 sets of tires. Just trying to think here. It may be a fuel mileage race because it's like 293 laps. It's kind of an odd number of laps, but it's the 400-miler. So
it's a Saturday race. That's going to be a little different.
It's Sunday. It's Mother's Day.
It's usually on Saturday.
Yeah.
Well, it's this weekend.
Yeah.
It's this weekend.
I think this is really bad. I think the truck race is Friday night, and then the Xfinity Saturday night.
I could have swore it was Saturday night.
I think it's a Mother's Day.
It may not. It's Sunday. I see it right here. It's a Sunday. That's totally my bad.
Hey, it's all good. The next one's going to be Saturday night.
Yeah, that was totally my bad.
I'm pretty sure. Maybe it's Sunday night.
It's usually not on a Sunday, though.
Wow.
They've changed that up because it's always been on a...
Promise we're not fair weather NASCAR fans. Maybe a little lackadaisical, but, it's all good.
They usually don't race on Mother's Day, though. That's weird.
I think they just started it, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically you want to look for a driver that's saving the tire. If it was during the day, they'd be eating them up. Not that they won't at night, but that heat in South Carolina, that eats at it. And also the sand.
Yeah.
You're not at the beach, but you're not far from it.
You're going to have a lot of humidity, likely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's just go ahead and I guess see what DraftKings has to offer. Then we'll skip to FanDuel. So as we can tell here, Kyle Larson starting in 14th. He's at 11-4. Joey Logano starting in 12th at 11-1. Denny Hamlin starting in 7th at 10-6. Martin Truex Jr. starting in 4th at 10-3. And Brad Keselowski starting on the pole at 10K. So we have 5 drivers in that 10K range. Now, last week I went with Kyle Larson. It seemed like a no-brainer. He was starting in 32nd. He got up to the front very fast. And he really... I don't know how our audience's opinion of that bogus caution they threw with Chris Buescher leading the race, and then Reddick's tire being out there. Like, they waited for everyone to come down pit road, but they cited it as a safety issue. Well, it would have been a safety issue as soon as it went out on the... Anyway.
Someone's going to run into the infield and catch that tire.
Yeah, and I heard Luke Lambert, the crew chief for Chris Buescher, and I heard Chris Buescher talking about it, and there's nothing really good you can say there, because it's like, they kind of screwed you over. NASCAR screwed you over. You tried to gamble, and they're like, we're going to wait until you pit.
Right.
And we're going to throw it when you pit. So it's like, anyway, just bogus. If they would have kept it green, like they probably should have, if you'd already drove 20 laps like they did, or 15, whatever it was, Kyle Larson would have won that race easily. Larson was dominating. And then he drove Blaney into one, got behind on some restarts, and, they went up in the wall together. Had that not happened, Larson would have won the race. Now, I don't know that we would have came away with a win in terms of my lineup goes, but it would have been close. In terms of strategy for Darlington, Kyle Larson's really hard to argue with. And him starting in 14th in the Hendrick Motorsports car, he didn't get to run the race, of course, 3 races last year. I'm going to skip on down through, basically, and I'm going to look at the other values. I don't want to go ahead and pick out a top-tier driver because he's so expensive. And I know he's going to be chalky. For example, in my single-entry tournament, Larson was on 70-some%. Which is crazy. I don't think he'll be that highly owned this week just because of him starting in 14th. And you can get a little crazy with the salaries, really.
Yeah, he was a little bit above 50 in my FanDuel.
Yeah, it was
the big FanDuel tournament.
Cindric was highly owned. I had a very chalky lineup, and I didn't really expect it. And Briscoe was my non-chalk, and Briscoe it's going to be hard for me to pick him the rest of the year. He's going to have to prove something.
Yeah.
But when looking through statistics, the number one driver that I found in terms of average finish overall, now the last 10, that award goes to Kevin Harvick. In the last 10, he's had an average finish of 3.5. And we'll get back to Kevin Harvick here soon. But Eric Jones is the driver that I'm looking at. So he's had 6 starts here. And he's had 6 top 10s. Has never finished outside the top 10. His average finish is 5.2, which is remarkable. Now,
crazy.
He's in the Richard Petty Motorsports camp this year. He's not with Joe Gibbs Racing anymore. The driver that I'm going to choose is the old car of Eric Jones, and that is Christopher Bale. He's starting in 21st position. He's at 8.6. Now, Bale, his history in the Xfinity Series is not all that great here. He never won, but starting in 21st spot in the car and team that already has it down pat, this track. I mean, Eric Jones, 6 straight top 10s. That's remarkable. Mm-hmm. And I feel that Christopher Bale at the 8,600 mark is well worth it. Bale could win the race. It's probably I wouldn't even say highly unlikely because he's won a race this year, but I really like Christopher Bale at that number. I could not persuade myself not to pick Bale at that point. Now we have an average remaining salary of $82.80. So let's go ahead and scroll to the very bottom here. Last week I went with William Byron. I really thought he was going to dominate, and it didn't turn out that way. He didn't have a bad finish. He finished 9th, I believe. He kept the top 10 streak going. So as you can tell here, Quinn Houff, Cody Ware, McLeod, Yaley. Yaley is actually the only one I would consider down there. He's got 22.5 fantasy points per race. Now, one of those races I believe he did the Daytona 500 as well. But at Talladega, he got a pretty good finish. Yaley, starting in 34th, could get you like 27th, I would say. Somewhere in that mark. Now, Darlington doesn't really breed cautions. It's not a track that, as hard as it is to drive, they don't really wreck that much, like in terms of bringing out cautions.
It's usually like a single car.
Yeah.
Them slamming the wall, and then they're down in the apron.
Yeah, and if you watch the old races, a lot of green flag runs, and I don't expect anything different with this one. I know it'll be a long green flag run. There'll probably be 15 to 20 cars finish on the lead lap. 20 would be liberal about that. Yeah. I believe it'll be closer to 15. Also, one thing to note, and I forgot to mention this. I know I was missing something in 11 sets of tires. They are running the 750 horsepower package. So it's going to be low downforce, high horsepower. which is part of the reason why I picked Bale too. So I need to throw that in there.
Yeah.
The next driver that I'm going with is Corey Lejoy. He's starting in 30th. He's at 5,700. I really feel like this is a track where they can actually break through and get that top 20. Now, Corey Lejoy's career here average finish is 30.5, which is right there where he's starting. I don't think he'll finish that bad. He's also running a cool Alan Kwiecki paint scheme. I don't know if you saw that, Xerex. Not that is going to make him go faster.
Oh, it will. Could. Oh, it will.
Yeah,
sure.
Well, hopefully.
He's a former champion, so it should.
Yeah, hopefully in our case it would.
Yeah.
But I really like Corey Lejoy at 30th, especially that cheap. And reason being, I want to pay up for some of those drivers that's starting up towards the front. Because I do believe track position can be key. But just to give you a little hint there, that's kind of what I'm doing. So I'm going with Corey Lejoy. As you scroll through the field here, Ryan Preece was really hard not to roll with. Preece has had a great season this year. His past is a little better at Darlington than Lejoy. But that $200 I think will come in handy for me. So scrolling up here. We have Ross Chastain starting in 18th. He's driving a Hutch Strickland old paint scheme. Chris Buescher starting in 11th. Chris Buescher is going to be interesting. He has ran really well this season, had a great finish. He was leading the race before the bogus caution. So he could be interesting there. His fantasy points per race is 31, which is not bad at all. You have Cole Custer starting in 24th. Cole Custer has a great history in the Xfinity Series here. So that's one thing to note. The next driver that I'm going to roll with, though, is Tyler Reddick. So Tyler Reddick starting in the 10th spot. If you look at Tyler Reddick's past races, I'll just go ahead and click it here. You can tell that he's got 7th, 7th, 20th, 8th, 7th. Pretty remarkable.
Pretty consistent.
And he's starting in 10th. I really wanted to go Austin Dillon. Now, here's the thing. I really like the Richard Childress Racing engines right now. They're running really well. Dillon's getting top 15s. Reddick is actually running better than Dillon. And this is a track that does suit Tyler Reddick's driving style very well. He runs the high lane tracks, very high line tracks, I guess you can say, pretty well. That's why I picked him at Kansas, too. But I really like him at this track. He's at 9,400. He had some second place finishes in the Xfinity Series. He was okay here. It wasn't like he was terrible. He did lead 70 laps in one of them. But that leaves us with $9,400. As you can tell here, looking at the top tier, Almirola starting in 27th. Great spot. $8,000, a little much to pay for him. Stuart Haas has been very underwhelming this year. Eric Jones starting in 26th, 8-2. Not sure if I'll pick him yet. But he's starting, and he's at 8-2. That's just a little high for me. Ryan Blaney starting in 16th at 9,000. If Ryan Blaney had a halfway decent track record here, I'd pull the trigger. Just for the price alone. But I'm just going to cut to the chase. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I really fault myself on this, but I'm going to pick Kyle Larson. For some reason, I kept trying to tell myself, don't pick Larson, but I feel like I have to pick Larson. My God, the man has led every race basically at Darlington that he's ever performed. His average finish is 6.7. It's hard for me not to pick him. This is a track tailor-made for him. I believe he could go up there rather quickly and lead a bunch of laps. And that leaves us with a remaining salary of $8,450, which is not bad. I am very happy with that. But yeah, that's what I'm rolling with there. So I'm picking Kyle Larson. Scrolling on down here, one driver that I feel very confident in this week, and I know I just mentioned that Austin Dillon starting in 9th is, kind of a unique situation. I think he's starting a little high, but I'm actually pulling trigger on Matt DiBenedetto. Matt DiBenedetto is starting to turn the corner. If you click his name as well, he's got 4th, 5th, 9th, 12th, 13th, 11th, 14th, 16th. I mean, he's been super consistent. I really like him this week. He showed promise last week as well. I mean, didn't he get 4th last week? No, I'll have to click it there.
Something like that.
Yeah, so he did get a top 5, and it was well worth it. But he's actually pretty decent here. He did get a couple top 10s in the 95 car, I believe. I know he got one for sure. But he always was hanging around the top 15, and I really liked DiBenedetto there at that spot. And I'm thinking he'll be relatively unowned.
I believe so.
because he's starting in 8th, that's going to turn a lot of people off. People are going to go with Stenhouse. Stenhouse, actually, this is like his worst track, which you would think it would be a decent track for him with the dirt background a little bit, but it's not. He's not very good here at all.
I was going to bring out something in my portion, but there's something interesting about the 8 starting spot. There's been 3 winners of the last 13 races from the 8 starting spot.
There you go.
So Matt DiBenedetto, he could be due this week.
Yep. And, I mean, the consistency is what I was looking at for sure. Lejoy is not my ideal pick. I'm just basically doing that so I can pick DiBenedetto. Hopefully it'll give me a little bit of a cushion in case he underperforms, a little bit. But my next choice, I kind of let the cat out of the bag there about Ryan Blaney. But I'm pulling with Ryan Blaney. Going with the Penske car. He's starting in 16th. I know the track record is not there, but the value, I know the last couple videos I was preaching value, value, value. And I was winning like crazy. And last week I'm like, Byron, Larson, that's who I think's going to win. I think you got to go with value. So I'll just go ahead and clear it up, and then that way Yachts can cover FanDuel here. So you got Kyle Larson, most expensive driver, 11.4. Should be the most expensive driver. His fantasy points per race, 48.7. Love his past history here. And the track just is like his number one track. Suits his style for sure. Scrolling down here. Ryan Blaney starting in 16th at 9,000. I think Blaney, honestly, if he gets me a top 10 there, that's a pretty good value. So that's what we're going with. Christopher Bale starting in 21st at 8.6. Love the 20-car history here. Love the fact that, Christopher Bale did okay in the 95 car last year. But at 8,600, he's just a great value. I look for him to get a top 10 for me as well. Matt DiBenedetto starting in 8th. I'm hoping that can be my, Cinderella pick, basically. Like Yacht said about the 8th position. Really like him there. Tyler Reddick. Ultimately, it came down to me picking Dillon at 9 or Reddick at 10. Reddick has the one spot higher, going with Tyler Reddick there. And he's due as well for a win. Consistency is great for DiBenedetto and Reddick. And then coming down here, I'm going to go with Corey Lejoy as my dark horse pick. So that is what I have for DraftKings.
Well, when I was making my lineup, I really wanted to focus on I went with a lot of strategies this year, but I really wanted to focus on hot streaks. Not only with the season, how drivers have been performing this season, but in the past at Darlington. One thing I noticed, Toyota has won 8 of the last 15 races at Darlington. So I at least wanted to pick one Toyota driver in my lineup, just regardless of how things played out. And I just want to get that one right out of the way. And since we're talking about hot streaks, Kyle Busch is going to be my first driver. Kyle Busch, he won in the crazy fashion that it was last week. Yep. Is Kyle Busch back? I certainly think so. He's got that win. Hey, I think he won the weekend last year, last week, didn't he?
He swept it. I thought he was back a couple weeks ago. I remember picking him, and here he is.
I think Kyle Busch is back, and he has a really good track record here at Darlington, 7.8 in the last 6. Of those Toyota drivers that have won at Darlington, he was the first. He got not only the first win as a Toyota driver at Atlanta in 2008, but he got the first Darlington Toyota win. So, this is stupid facts, but he's starting in 3rd, and I think he'll just stay up there because I think they're kind of working into a groove, and I think he's back. I think he's ready and raring to go and ready to compete in the playoffs.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see, but I think he is. We're going to go back up, though. You have your top tier. It's always even. 12,000 is your top tier. Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, Kyle Larson, Truex, and Hamlin. Kyle Larson, it was hard to argue against Kyle Larson this week, but I went with the theory that he will be picked a lot.
I tried not to pick him, but I couldn't.
And I did not pick him this week. I really wanted to. I feel like I really consider him every week because usually he's usually starting like in about where he is now in 14th, so he can climb up. So it's It was hard to pass on him this week, but I did. I did. But as long as we're going hot streaks, William Byron, 11-5. He does not have a great track record here at Darlington. 21.6 in his last 5. I think that's his only 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably, yeah.
21.6 is not good, especially starting in the 5th spot. But going on hot streaks, Darlington, in his last 2, he's finished 12th and 5th. So he's had 9 straight top 10s. 9 straight top 10s. That's insane. Mm-hmm. Especially for a driver that, he's been in the NASCAR Top Series for I think 4 years. I think this is his 4th year, right? He's getting there. He's getting there gradually, but yeah, he's been driving really consistent here lately. 9 straight top 10s. 11-5. That may be a little high, but he's performing really well, and it's hard just to not pick him. I think he could stay up there, and I think the last 2 races at Darlington proved that. 12th and 5th place finishes. I think he can stay in the top 5 and compete, because he's certainly driving like one of the top drivers this year. He's 3rd in the points.
Yep.
So it's hard to argue against him. We're going to go down, though. Eric Jones, he's just awesome here. And again, I felt like he was going to be picked a ton. I don't remember what he was in DraftKings, but he's 7,300 in FanDuel. And, that's about where
82.
He's at. 82. He's a little higher in DraftKings, but that's about where he is normally every week, 7,300, 7,000. So, not a bad price for him, but I think he's going to be picked a lot. So I just decided not to go with him. Moving on down, J.J. Yeley's actually, 2,000. He's in the bottom options. AustYn did a good job thinking about him. But like AustYn said, there's a lot of green flag laps.
Yeah, and it's easy to get lapped here.
Yeah, it can happen within 20 laps. Mm-hmm. Like, you can just get turned around. So there's a lot of green flag laps, and I don't think things are going to change, especially this year. AustYn went with Corey Lejoy. I think you can pull the trigger on him every once in a while. I just feel like him and Justin Haley, I think you can pull the trigger on them every once in a while at tracks like this.
Doing it this week.
Yeah, I think it's very possible, and he could be in a winning lineup for sure. Chase Briscoe, he's been kind of a disappointment this year. He is a rookie, I get it, but it's just he's not really performed well this year, and I don't really feel comfortable. I think he's got to win at Darlington in the Xfinity Series, or if he doesn't, he's ran decent at Darlington. But I'm not going to take a chance on him this week. He's won. I think he did. Yeah, I thought he did. Ross Chastain's ran fine in the Xfinity Series, but 18th is just it's a little too high for him. Stenhouse has not ran well in his career. I don't think he has 1 top 10 in his career at Darlington. That's pretty crazy. Ryan Newman could be a solid pick at 6,020. He could get a top 10. And I could see him being viably in a winning lineup. But we're not going to go with him. I made a really good lineup, I feel like, but we'll see what happens on Sunday. Cole Custer's good here. Really considered him 6,500, but I think he'll be picked a decent amount. I didn't go with him. Moving on up, I really wanted to consider Tyler Reddick, but that 10th starting spot just kind of swayed me. I felt like if he were like where Kyle Larson is starting in the 14th, 15th starting spot, I would definitely consider him, but I'm not going to pick him this week. DiBenedetto was another one. He's ran well here, starting in 8th spot. I think track position could be working in your favor early on in these type of races where you can just stay up towards the top. And I think that could work this week for Matt DiBenedetto. And I was really considering him because I was wanting to see. I looked up prior to them setting their lineups that 8 was going to be the number I was going to focus on because there was 3 of the last 13 winners.
That's wild.
And I was like, I wonder who's going to be number 8 this week. It was Matt DiBenedetto. I was like, well, he's not ran that bad here, so I think he could be an interesting pick. But we're not going to go with Matt DiBenedetto. We are going to go with Kyle Busch's brother, Kirk Bush. We went with Kirk Bush last week. We're going to go with him again this week. Believe it or not, in the last 6, Kirk Busch has a better average finish than Kyle. 7.0 in the last 6. And starting in 17th, that's a good spot for him. In those last 6, I mean, obviously he's finished on the lead laps. And honestly, Kirk Busch is our riskiest pick, I feel like. Because we made a really solid lineup this week on FanDuel. And you want a guy that you're picking on the lower end. You want him to complete laps. You want him to be there in the end. You want him to finish on the lead lap. And Kirk Busch can do that 100%. Starting in 17th, 8,500. That's a really great price for him. So we're gonna take a look at our average salary. It's 9,900. So we're not going to go too far up. Well, we'll look at the top. AustYn did a good job of breaking that down, and we're gonna go no top tier this week. That feels like crazy to say on FanDuel. You're not going at least one top tier driver, tier 1. But I think you'll see what I'm talking about when I finish this. We're going to go down about right there. Keselowski, starting in the 1 spot, he has nowhere to go but down. And, I mean, he could lead a lot of laps, but I'm not expecting it. We'll see, though. I really don't know, because Darlington is just a really tough track to gauge, especially when there's no practice and there's no qualifying to see how these drivers are performing at any given time. But we're going to go down. Chase Elliott's one of those guys that hasn't won a race this year.
Yeah.
It's just wild to think that. Denny Hamlin's not won a race. They've ran well. They'll get the win eventually. It could be this week. Hopefully they'll hold off 1 week because I'm not going to pick them. We already picked William Byron, so I'm going to go below him. Christopher Bale was a guy that I was really kind of focusing on to see where he was going to start because I think he'll run well here. 21st starting spot. And drivers do climb up. I was looking at the past results, like especially the last 3 when there's been no qualifying and no practice. Drivers do climb up. Like John Hunter Nemechek climbed up from 34th to I think 9th last year.
Yeah,
I mean it happens more often than you think, and that's who's going to get your most points. Those guys that climb. And I didn't really go that route this week because the salary really didn't warrant it, and who I wanted to pick. The guys that were locks, it didn't really warrant my strategy this week. But if you can find a way to get some of these drivers that are starting towards a lower end, the lower half, more power to you. I think that could be a good winning strategy. Of this group, I feel safest. He's not won a race at Darlington ever, but I think he could be due. We're going to go with Joey Logano. Starting in 12th. He has a 10.2 average finish in the last 6. He's ran 14 races here, and he's got 7 top 10s. Not awesome, but, I mean, 10.2 in the last 6, nothing to scoff at. And the last 2 races, much like William Byron, he's ran well in the last 2 races with no qualifying and no practice. 6th and 3rd in his last 2. So
that is really cheap for Logano.
That is very cheap for Logano. Logano was the second highest priced guy on DraftKings this week, and he is $10,000 on FanDuel.
What in the world?
It's insane how cheap he is, and I think he'll be picked a lot because of it. If players are vigilant and looking at the roster, but hopefully he won't be that well owned. I don't really know how to approach Joey Logano this week as far as the ownership value goes, but that's a heck of a value at $10,000. I do know that. because he's one of the best drivers in the field, week in and week out, any track. And starting in 12th, that's 11 spots to climb, and he could win the race. He's never won here, but he could win it. It's very possible. That leaves us with $9,800 to spend. So we'll just go all the way down below Logano. And these guys, I talked about a couple of them. Well, DiBenedetto and Reddick. Kirk Bush, we already picked him. Christopher Bale, I really wanted to pick him. But we're going to go with a similar strategy that AustYn had. Ryan Blaney. Starting in 16th. Much like a couple weeks ago when they were at Richmond. Yep. Richmond was his worst track. Darlington, I think, is his 4th worst track. He has not ran well here. He's never been a good Darlington driver ever. But I'll get to it, though. He has a 20th average finish in the last 6th. Not good. Especially when you're starting 16th. You want some positive value there. But in the past, it's shown that Ryan Blaney has not ran well here. But I want to really focus in on hot streaks, and he's 5th in the points this year. He's ran well all year. Now, there's a couple tracks that he's kind of botched at, but, it happens, Denny Hamlin's not got top 10s everywhere, but he's blowing the field away.
Yep.
So, Ryan Blaney, I think, is a very valuable pick at 9,500, even though his track record's not good here. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. I found in his last Xfinity Series race here in 2019, he finished 3rd. So, and that was a good field. They had like Tyler Reddick, Cole Custer. Denny Hamlin actually won the race and got taken away.
That's how Custer won, yeah.
Yeah, Custer won in 2019. But they all ran well. They were all at the top. That was a good field, too. And he finished 3rd. So, it could be just like Cup Series jitters. Like some of these tracks, I think some of these drivers just have jitters at the higher levels. And when they're in the lower levels, they feel like they can take advantage of the situation. Hopefully that's the case with Ryan Blaney this week. Hopefully he finds his groove, and hopefully he can get us a good finish. Because 9,500 it's really cheap for him, honestly. Him and Logano, 10,000. Logano was more insane because he's ran well here in the past. But I think looking at this lineup, it's just really solid. If I do say so myself, it is really solid. We're going to clean it up, though. Again, this week we are going to bypass the Tier 1. That feels very odd to say, but I think we can make it work here at Darlington, and we got really a solid pack of drivers here that we chose this week. William Byron, first off the list, he is the hottest driver in NASCAR right now. 9 straight top 10s. Not a great track record here, and there's a couple of them that's not had a great track record that we chose, but that means they probably won't be chosen a lot. And that's really what I kind of wanted to focus on as well. Moving on down, Kyle Busch, starting in the 3rd spot. Has a good history here. He's a former winner. By the way, there was only 2 multiple winners here, so it's pretty diverse. Mm-hmm. Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin were the only multiple winners. And the one thing that I really, going back up, I apologize for this, Denny Hamlin has finished all but one of his races on the lead lap at Darlington. So rightfully so, he is the highest priced guy. But I think he'll be picked a lot. And that's why I wanted to avoid him this week. But anyway, I wanted to go at least one Toyota driver, and I knew, Denny Hamlin or Kyle Busch was going to be the favorites. Truex runs well here, but I wanted to go with Kyle Busch because he's hot off of a win. And I wanted to focus on hot streaks, and what better way to do it than to get the last winner of the last race in the Cup Series. Moving on down, Joey Logano, starting in 12th. Not an awesome track record here, but a solid track record here. And starting in 12th, I think he'll be competing in the top 10 all day for sure. And I think he's proved that with his last 2 races. at Darlington, 6th and 3rd. So I think, especially $10,000, that's just an insane price for him. It's really cheap. Right in a row, Ryan Blaney. Definitely not a good track record here, but he's ran well all year, considering the seemingly deeper field. It's just seemingly like a deeper field this year, and everybody's running well. Well, a lot of people, not everybody's running well, but a lot of people are running well. But I think he's a risk worth taking at 9,500, starting in 16th. And we're not straying too far away. We kind of went in a row here. Kirk Bush. The better Busch driver at Darlington in the last 6. Has a 7th place average finish. And my lowest price guy, I wanted consistency, and he's finished on the lead lap in the last 6. So that's really what you want. And looking back, this is a really good lineup, I think. And I hope I'm not just over-talking it too much, but I think it is a really solid lineup. That will finish it up with FanDuel this week.
Yeah, so according to Yachts lineup, if Bovada or any of those, if you're in a state that you can do sportsbook gambling, you want to pick a winner with a number less than 24 down. You got all 5 there.
Yep. But
yep. Like we say, Darlington just is. I feel like we say this every week, but Darlington's pretty tough to decipher. The way that you win in DFS though is you go off of value. You see what the services give you in price, and then you run with it. Yeah. Because a lot of people fall into that trap where, well, I think this driver's going to win the race, so I'm going to pick him. Like I said, I fought myself to pick Larson. I ended up picking him because it worked out with my salary. Because I ended up going with Corey Lejoy and, deciphering certain things like that. But hopefully that helped you out a little bit in terms of strategy. So yeah, just follow us on Twitter at @TheSportsChief, also on Instagram at @TheSportsChief, same handle, or on thesportschief.com. We got the shirt repping the.
He's got the shirt. I wore it a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we got a little merch that wish we could sell it, but
throwback weekend. I wanted to go Mark Martin,
right?
My favorite old school driver.
Yeah, I just got an old school hat on. I didn't put the DJ Hardy's hat on. I feel like I've been overwearing it.
I was gonna wear my Logano Darlington throwback paint scheme, the Steve Park, but I didn't want conflicting things with Pennzoil and Valvoline, so
Yep. So also subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Hit the bell notification that lets you know that.
Hopefully you're already subscribed.
That's true. Yeah. Yep. But if you're not, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Also hit the notification, lets you know whenever we come up and go live. Also, make any comments, questions, or concerns that you have for us. We try to answer those.
Tell me I'm an idiot when I say the race is on Saturday. Tell me I'm an idiot, please. No, don't do that. I don't want to cry.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for the Goodyear 400 at Darlington, and best of luck to you this week.
All right, I appreciate it.